Now we're going to take a look at our edit panel and some of the options we have for editing, and a little more in depth than we did before, covering all of the tools. I'm going to start out just by creating some basic shapes here to create a simple object. I'm going to turn this to the intersection mode. Right mouse clicked, create a new object. We'll go ahead and change this to rectangle. Okay. So now we can see we have an object that's fully intersected, but we have a lot of overlapping points. And now normally if we just wanted to keep the outline, there's a tool available for that, which we'll be covering a little bit later. But this is just more of a demonstration to show you exactly how these tools work and how we can use them. So if you're working in a different area where you have specific points and lines you want to get rid of, then we can use our different edit tools. Our first tool is our delete segment. Now this is going to allow us to delete areas between certain points, so basically every single segment. If I go ahead and click here, we can see we can delete specific segments. I'll go ahead and undo those. And we also have a trim mode. Now trim mode is going to delete entire areas of curves between intersections, as opposed to our delete segment, which is just areas basically between points. So it's really a matter of what it is you want to remove and how much you want to remove of it. So we go ahead and click here and we can see that whole section is removed. If I was to use delete segment, it would just remove a small area. You can see right there I did the delete segment and it didn't remove the whole piece. Undo that, use trim, and click on that. You can see it removes the whole segment. And just that whole area of our curve between the different amounts of points. And if we open up the numeric for this, we can notice that there is no numeric options for either of these. Because it's really not needed. The tool itself is fairly straightforward. We also have, just below that, is an extend mode. This allows us to extend points to connect certain areas. We go ahead and click right here. You can see we extended a point downward. Click again. We extend our point outward. And now you can see we're extending directly from our curve out to this line. Out straight this way. It really depends on what it is you're working on. You can see we get a nice tangent here between our different points with this extend mode. Out here, from this end, we sort of get a tangent all the way down to this point, and we'll just make our connecting lines between objects. That is, if the points line up to create what we can use for an extend. We're going to move on now. We have a couple of different options, and I'm going to clear out this current object just so we can show this a little bit better. I'm going to start out by creating a circle. And I'm also going to create a line. Just a couple of different points here. Okay, so let's take a look at our first, which is our fillet. And if you're familiar with other drafting programs, this will work basically the same way as other programs do. But what I can do is select our first line, and then select our second line, so we're going to move up to the top and select this point, so we have our extension coming off the side, because what I want to do is create a fillet between this line and the top of our circle. So now I'll click on the second line, and you can see we have our fillet created. Hit N on the keyboard to pull up our numeric options, so we can define this a little more specifically, and we can just drag this out or type in a specific value. And what we end up with is just a nice curve between this line, so we have a projecting line between both of our objects, creating this amount. We can also click on this circle right here to adjust our overall radius within the view. Spacebar to clear that out, and now we can see we have these new polygons created. or our new curves. Our next tool we're going to take a look at is basically the same thing, except the fact that it's not going to give us a curve, and that's the Chamfer Tool. So we'll select, I'm going to start out with our top line, and then our bottom. And now you can see we basically have the same thing, but now we have a direct beveled edge. We're just using 2 points and one line to connect these two, and we can adjust our distance as opposed to our radius now. So that's fairly straightforward. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the blend. So I'm going to undo this, and let's go to our blend mode. Now you can see I clicked on our top and this line over here. It's the top of our circle and this line, and now we have the ability to draw a curve out and blend these objects together a little more manually. And keep in mind these lines that we have are going to be projecting directly off of our specified line, and they will stay in that angle. So depending on what it is you're working on, you might need to select different points to achieve the kind of effect that you want, or even just use a variety of different points. Most of these tools are here for very quick connections. Typically, if we wanted to do a little more precise curve, we could use the curve tool and just the snapping options with our points. But this is here to create a very quick blend between our different objects, and it also gives us a little more flexibility depending on what type of object we're working with as well. And our next is going to be our offset. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and I'm going to create a couple of different shapes. So I'm going to start out with a circle, and then I'll create a rectangle, and I'm also going to create a line, and I'll come up here and make a curve. Zoom out so we can see all of these, and I'll just go ahead and expand this to a full viewport. Okay, come back, select our offset, and now what we want to do is specify exactly which curve we want to offset. So we'll first select our circle, and now we know we want to offset that, and we get these controller points that allow us to adjust our offset. And if we look at the numeric, you can see the positive value, we're going on the outside, and I'm going to just open up our snap panel, turn off that projective snap right now. And now we can go on the inside, which is going to give us a negative value. And then we could just click flip side as well. So if we've made our value on the outside, we decide we want that value on the inside, we can click on flip side, which will basically just add or remove the negative from in front of your offset. And what we also have is a max error and a min error. And right now, because of the shapes we're working with, we're really not going to see this take effect, but we'll be coming back to this to kind of show you a little bit more in depth exactly what it is this is going to do. Now, if I decide maybe I don't want this circle to be offset and I want maybe this square, what I can do is just select our main control point and drag it over to our other object, which means we can drag it over to any of our different objects. Also note, if we take a look at our curve and our line, which are not typically closed end, they're just individual lines, we can see our offset creates open-end points. So that's one thing to keep in mind. We'll just go ahead and we can edit that if we want. And if we go beyond our values, we can end up with some rather interesting looking curves. So you want to make sure that you're not going beyond a certain value. Go ahead and hit the spacebar just to clear out that tool. And that's pretty much all of our edit commands. And in the next chapter, if you want to move on, we can take a look at the mass edit commands, where we actually have the ability to do some of these same options, but on an overall scale.